All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get going on this. This is performing row operations on a matrix. This is homework from Thursday night. All right, so it's due tonight, Friday by midnight. Okay, so you can work on here. You can do it on your own piece of paper. It's up to you, but the instructions are here. I mean, I should have put these on the side of it, but really, this, if you read this, it says take row 2 and add it onto row 1. Okay, that's what it really means. Right, so it means that onto row 1, right? So take row 2 and then add it and put it onto row 1. That's what it means. Okay, so that means that you're going to get this right here. So row 2 is -1, and you're going to add it onto row 1. So row 1 is now going to be, so -1 plus 2 will give you 1. So row 2, so if you look at it, we're at row 2, and I'm going to add it onto row 1. So 1 plus 0 is 1. Right? I'm going to keep doing that. 0 plus 1 is still 1. I keep doing that. So row 2 add onto row 1. So 2 plus 3, that will give you 5. And that's what row 2 plus row 1, adding onto row 1 looks like. Now, row 2 is still going to look the same. Okay, when it's not saying anything about row 2, we're just taking row 2 and we're adding it onto row 1. So that's what this is saying. So row 2 and row 3 are going to look the same. So -1, 1, 0, 2, and 0, 2, -3, -1. All right. So next, we're going to go ahead and take row 1 and add it onto row 2. Like, what? Right? But yeah, you know what? It works. So again, the idea is I'm going to take row 1 and add it onto row 2. So 1 plus -1, right? So row 2 is now going to be 0 because 1 plus -1 is 0. 1 plus 1, right? Row 2 plus row 1, right? Add it onto row 1. That's going to give you a 2. 1 add it onto 0. That's going to give you 1. And 5 add it onto 2 gives you 7. And that's what row 2 looks like now. Now row 1, still going to look the same. Row 3, still going to be the same. So row 1 is still 1, 1, 1, 5. And row 3 is still going to be 0, 2, -3, -1. And notice that I've accomplished something here. I've got a 1 at the very top and zeros below it. Okay, and that's actually what I want to accomplish. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take 1/2 of row 2, right? Which means that row 1 stays the same, and row 3 stays the same. Okay, so I'm going to take 1/2 of row 2. So 1/2 is 0, right? So looking at this, so looking at row 2, right? So you got to look at the matrix above to get the answer. Right? So looking at row 2, I'm going to take 1/2 of that. So half of 0 is going to be 0. Half of 2 is going to be 1. Half of 1 is going to be 1/2. And half of 7 is going to be 7/2. You can write 3.5 or 3.5, but I like this improper fraction, 7/2. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to do 2 moves at once for this next. So this next one. Okay. So first, I'm going to go ahead and I'll do this one in red. Right. Okay. And this is row operation 3. Okay. So this is the third thing you can do to rows. All right. So I'm going to take row 2, multiply it by -1. Right, or just say the opposite of row 2. So take row 2, multiply by -1, and then add it onto row 1. Okay, so that's what it's saying right there in red. So add it onto row 1. So So row 1 is now going to be 0. Opposite of that is still 0. Plus 1 is still 1. And I've still got that 1 there. Okay, next one. Okay, that 1 right here, I'm going to do opposite. So negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Okay, I'm going to take half opposite of this. So negative 1/2. Negative 1/2 plus 1 is 1/2. Okay, I'm going to take the opposite of this. So negative 7/2. I'm going to write on the side because it's a little difficult. Negative 7/2 plus 5. And 5 could be called 5 over 1. Right? So that's 7/2. But if I do the opposite, it'll be negative 7/2. And I'm going to add it to row 1, which is going to give you negative 7/2 plus 5. I'm making a common denominator of 2. So you actually got negative 7/2 plus 10/2, which makes 7, 8, 9, 10, 3/2. So that last one is going to be 3 over 2, or 1.5 if you like decimals. Okay, so that's that one right there. This one right here. Okay, so let me get rid of that. Okay, this next one also says, hey, you know what? Let's take row 2 again. So we're using row 2 for both. Let's take row 2 again. Okay, this row 2 up here. Let's take row 2 again and multiply by negative 2. Okay, and then add it to row 3. Okay, and they want that. So row 2 times negative 2 is 0. So that's 0 times negative 2 is still 0. And then if I add it to row 3, I still get 0. Okay, this is the one that matters. Okay, so I have a 1 right here. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Added to 2 is going to be 0. Okay, 1/2. 1/2 times negative 2. Okay, you can write out if you want. 1/2 times negative 2. 1/2 times negative 2. Okay, and these cancel, so you get negative 1. Okay, so we have the 1/2 right here. Okay, so 1/2 times negative 2 is negative 1. Added to negative 3 is going to give you negative 4. Okay, the last one. 7/2. Okay, again, a little difficult, so let's write down 7/2 times negative 2. What does that make? And again, these 2's cancel, and you're left with negative 7. Right, so 7/2 times negative 2 is negative 7, and negative 7 plus 1, or plus a negative 1 is negative 8. Okay, and that was changing row 1 and row 3 only. I didn't do anything to row 2. I used row 2 to help change row 1 and row 3, but I'm not changing row 1 and row 3. So row 1 and row 3 changes, but row 2, see, and I did row 1 and row 3, but row 2 is going to stay put, meaning I'm not touching it, and I'm just using it. So row 2 is going to stay the same. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy row 2. So row 2 is 0, 1, 1/2, and 7/2. Okay. I'm writing pretty small, so if you're not following along, you won't be able to copy that. Okay. And notice I've got ones with zeros below it. I got a 1 in the middle with zeros above it and zeros below it. It's pretty cool. Right. So I'm actually doing something very advanced right now. Right. And then next step, what does it say to do? Right. It says take row 3 and multiply by negative 1/4. So row 3 is right here. So think about it. So this right here says take row 3 and multiply by negative 1/4. So row 3 is sitting right here and multiply by negative 1/4. That's the same as saying dividing it by negative 4. Okay, so row 3, so 0 divided by negative 4, or row 3, so 0 times negative 1/4 is still 0. Same thing with the 0 right here. Negative 4 times negative 1/4, right? That makes 1. And negative 8 times negative 1/4, that makes a positive 2. And that's what my row 3 changes to. Right? Now, row 1 and row 2 does not change, so I'm going to go ahead and leave them alone. So row 1 is still 1, 0, 1/2. I'll write it like this. 3/2. Row 2 is still 0, 1, 1/2. 7/2. And look, and I've accomplished ones down the diagonal. And I've got zeros down below it. And now I need zeros above it. I need zeros here, and I also need it in these two spots. So that's what it looks like I'm attempting to do that. Zeros in those two spots. Okay, so now it says, okay, my final answer. I'm going to take 1/2 of row 3. And if you look at row 3 has a 1 in there. So I'm taking row 3. I'm taking 1/2 of that, or negative 1/2. I'm going to do this individually. And then I'm going to add it onto row 1. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So row 3 is going to be used because row 3 has that 1 right there. Okay, but I got to start with over here. So 0 times negative 1/2 is still 0. 0 plus 1 is still going to give me 1. And move on. 0 times 0 times negative 1/2 is still 0. Plus 0 is still 0. Okay, and those, if you do it correctly and properly, those will not change. Because if those change, then that means that you're screwing up your work, right? Because you work hard to get the 1 and the 0. And if you're doing other work which changes the 1 and the 0, that means that you just undid what you worked hard to get. Okay, now this is the moment we've been waiting for. We want this to be 0. Okay, so we're going to go and do 1/2, negative 1/2 of 1. That's going to be negative 1/2. Negative 1/2 plus 1/2 is going to give you 0. And that's the moment we've been waiting for. Okay. This right here, this is just a collateral damage, right? We just do it just because. Okay. So the last part. Okay, and we just got to get the answer, whatever it gets. Negative 1/2 times 2. And again, if you're having trouble, write it on the side. Negative 1/2 times 2. That just cancels and you get negative 1. So negative 1/2 times 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 plus 3/2. Again, I gotta get a common denominator. Ugh, tongue twister, which means I need a 2. So I'll get negative 2 over 2 plus 3 over 2. So that'll actually equal, negative 2 and positive 3 is a positive 1. So that gives me a positive 1/2. Okay. So that's that first part. Okay. And then I got to do this last part right here. It says take row 3, which is what I had already, and multiply it by negative 1/2 again, and then add it to row 2. So take row 3, which is this guy, multiply by negative 1/2, just like how I did last time. This time we're going to go ahead and add it onto row 2. That's the operation. Okay, so that's what it reads. Row 3 times a negative 1/2, and then add it onto row 2. Okay, so let's do that. So 0 times negative 1/2 is 0, and 0 plus 0 right there. And I'm going to put it onto row 2. It gives me 0 still, right? And it's good that it doesn't change. Right here. 0 times negative 1/2 is still 0, and 0 plus 1 is still 1. And good thing that it doesn't change, because I would be in trouble, because I need that to stay 1. Okay, this moment we've been waiting for. Okay, we got 1 times 1/2, or negative 1/2. So 1 times negative 1/2 is negative 1/2, and negative 1/2 plus 1/2 gets me 0. Yay, did it. Okay, now this last part, this is just side effects from doing all that work, right? So again, I call it collateral damage. It's just, we just got to do it, figure out what the answer is. All right, so negative 1/2 times 2 makes negative 1. We've done that a couple times. Negative 1, and then we're going to add it to 7/2. Again, we can't do that because we need common denominator. Common denominator is going to be 2. So we actually get negative 2 over 2 plus 7 over 2, which is going to make, what does it make? 5 over 2. Okay, and row 3 is what we were using, but we didn't change it. We only used it to get the other answers. Row 3 is now going to be copied down, and it stays the same: 0, 0, 1. And then what's that number? I can't see it. Oh, it's a 2. Okay. And look, I've actually worked my magic. I've actually got ones down the diagonal. I got I got zeros below the ones, and I get zeros above the one. And this is actually a very, very nice matrix. Yeah, I know there's some fractions, but it actually came out really nice. Okay, and that's what you want. Okay, and that's what you're going to eventually have to do on your own with your own moves, not the moves that I wrote down. Okay, so there's a couple other ones. I'll put these in. Let's see. So this one is, I'm going to take row 1 multiplied by -3. So row 1 multiplied by -3, and then add it onto row 2. Okay, and that's going to change row 2. So -3 times 1 is -3 plus 3 is going to give me 0. Okay, we're moving on. 0 times -3 is 0. 0 plus 2, that keeps it at 2. -3 times 2 is -6. -6 plus 4, right here. -6 plus 4 is going to be -2. And last one. -3 times 1 is -3. -3 plus 7 is going to give you 4. Okay. And that's that first move. Right? Now, obviously, row 1, we used it, but we're not going to change it. Row 1's only being used to add on to row 2. Okay, that's what it says here. Okay, but row 1 is not changed. So it's 1, 0, 2, and 1. And we did not even touch row 3. So 2, 1, 3, 4. You can see the start. I have 1 and I have zeros already. Okay. Yes, I have a 0 here too, but it's probably going to change because I need that to be a 1 first. Okay, I need that 2 to turn into a 1 before I can change it to a 0. Or else I'm doing it for no reason. Because once you get that 1 in the proper spot, then you can change it to 0. If you change stuff to zeros first, when you go back and try to change the spots to a 1, it's going to change those zeros. So don't do that yet. Okay, so this next step says, hey, take -2 and multiply by row 1 and then add it to row 3. So take -2 and multiply to row 1, so -2, and then add it on to row 3 like that. Okay, that's what it says. Okay, so -2 times 1 is -2 plus 2 is going to give me 0. Okay, I'm going to do the next one. Okay, -2 times 0 is still 0. 0 plus 1 is going to keep it at 1. Oops. Okay, moving along. Okay, -2 times 2 will be -4. Okay, the work right here. -4 plus 3 is going to give me -1. Okay, the last one for this row. -2 times, so right here, -2 times 1 is -2. -2 plus 4 is going to be 2. And that wraps up our third row. Okay, row 1 and row 2 did not change. So row 1, I'm just going to copy it. 1, 0. And when you copy it, copy from the previous step. Okay, don't copy from the top, because the top may not be correct anymore. So 1, 0, 2, 1, 0, 2, -2, 4. Okay, and now we're looking at this. So now it says take row 2 and multiply by 1/2. Okay, which is pretty easy because row 2 is all of it right here. And we're going to multiply by 1/2. We'll just take half of it. We're divided by 2. Okay. Oh, let's leave it there just to help us. All right, so take row 2. Right now, I'm just working on row 2 and take half of it, basically. Half of 0 is 0. Half of 2 is 1. Half of -2 is -1. Half of 4 is 2. You see how fast that was? And that's all I did was just change row 2. Okay, I still need to copy down row 1 and row 3. So row 1 is 1, 0, 2, 1. Just copying it from up here. Row 3 is going to be 0 from up here. 1, -1, 2. Okay, and this is the last one because I guess I didn't want you guys to do any more because maybe I'm out of time. Maybe I'm out of space. Right, this one says take the opposite of row 2, or like you say row 2 multiplied by -1, and then add it onto row 3. Okay, so it says take row 2, which is this row, multiply by -1, or just take the opposite of it, and then add it onto row 3. And we want to add that onto there. Okay, so that's what it's saying to do. Okay, so what do we get? Okay, so now we're only working on row 2. Keep that in mind. So -0 is still 0, and 0 plus 0 still gets you 0. Okay, -1 plus 1, that gets me 0 on row 3. Okay, -1, that means it's a positive 1. And positive 1 plus -1 is a 0. Wow, I'm getting some nice numbers. Okay, last one. We got -2 plus 2, and that gives me 0. Wow, I got zeros all along the bottom. Okay, that was like my last move. Right, so that means a row 1, I'm going to copy it down. 1, 0, 2, and 1. Remember, I'm copying it from the previous step. Okay, don't copy it from the very, very first step. And then row 2, I'm going to leave it alone. So row 2, I'm going to copy it right here. Okay, so 0, 1, -1, and 2. All right, and that's the best I can do with that one. Okay, or at least for number 2. Okay, that's my final answer for number 2. Okay, number 3. Right there. Trying not to get confused. All right, number 3 says take row 3 times row 1, and then add on to row 2. Right. So we want to do this. We want to take row 1, take this row, multiply by 3, and then add it onto here. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus -3 is going to give me 0. Notice how I'm getting 0. I'm after the zeros and the ones. That's what I'm after. Okay, right there. Next one. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus -5 is 1. That goes in row 2. Next one. This one's not going to come out nice, or it's not going to look nice as a whole matrix. Okay, but we're still getting zeros and ones. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 minus 7, or 9 plus a -7, is going to give me 2. Okay, and the last one. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus a -4 is going to be -1. Okay, and that's my matrix right there. Okay, my row 1 has not changed. I use row 1 to get to row 2, but I'm leaving row 1 alone, so I'm going to copy it down. I'm copying it from up here. 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay. Okay, so one more step. Okay, so one more step. Now it says take this, right? And don't look at the previous matrix. Just look at this. And I'm going to go take -2 times row 2. So take row 2, times it by -2, and then add it back to row 1. Okay, what do I get? Okay, so -2 times 0 is still going to be 0. 0 plus 1, it's going to keep it at 1. And I like it like that, right? I like it like that because the 1's in the top left-hand corner. Okay, next one. -2 times 1 is -2, and -2 plus 2 gives me 0. And I like it like that because I got 0. Okay. Now, the rest of these are just collateral damage. They're just like casualties of war, right? You just do them because, you did it to the others, and then they're just in the way, so you have to kind of deal with them. Right. This next one is -2 times 2 is -4. -4 plus 3 will be -1. Okay, and that's not bad. -1 is not bad. last one. Negative 2 times negative 1 is going to be positive 2. Positive 2 plus 1 is going to give me 3. And that's my last ones. Remember, these are the casualties of war only, right? Meaning that I just do them because they're just part of the set. Okay. And row 2 has not changed, at least from the previous version. So I'm going to copy it down 0, 1, 2, and negative 1. Right? And notice I've got the ones down the diagonal, and I've got the 0 below it. Okay. I mean, for this one, there's no 0 below it because there's no line, no row below it. But I do have the zeros below the ones, and I have zeros above the ones. Okay. So that's all I got. Okay. The back one, I'm going to let you just try on your own. It's just try it. So you don't try it, you just don't try it. Okay. All right. That's a wrap. See you on Monday.